Hello everyone. Tonight, I'll be narrating two new creepy stories that I found off of the Let's Not Meet subreddit. After you've heard these stories, let me know what you think of them in the comments below. You be the judge. But without further ado, let's dive straight into their experiences.
These are their stories.
When I was 13, the dawning of a new millennium took place on New Year's Eve. While people were out partying and drinking, I was home alone. In 1996, my parents had split up, and from there they divorced, and my mother and I moved across the country from Oregon to Tennessee with her best friend. On the eve of the year 2000, I was home alone, and my mother was currently out of state. Now, this didn't worry me, as this was not the first time. I often came home to find a note on the kitchen counter saying they had gone to Florida for a few days, and that there were groceries in the fridge. Since the divorce, she was regularly leaving me alone for long periods of time to go to Florida. We lived on a relatively quiet road surrounded by trees and set a few miles out of town, and I knew most of the people, if not by name, then by face enough to wave and small chat with, and had never been before given a reason to be afraid of being alone. On the night in question, I was staying up late watching television and had most of the lights on in the house. Not because I was afraid, but because at 13, I wasn't concerned with electricity bills or saving the environment. I felt completely safe and protected within my little bubble of home. As I was watching the movie, I kept hearing these weird sounds outside, but I remember thinking it was probably the neighbors. Though they weren't extremely close, a couple of them were having a party/people over for the holiday. About halfway into the movie, however, the power in the house suddenly went dead. I sat on the couch for a minute, just sort of in a panicked daze, because it was near midnight and pitch black. I remember thinking the power must have gone out and that it would come back on, so I just decided to sit on the couch with my blanket and wait. A few minutes passed by when I heard a noise in the kitchen, where the back door is. My heart started racing in my chest, because I thought it sounded like the back door being shut. The back door sits just off the dining room, which is connected to the kitchen, which leads directly into the living room, where I was currently sitting on the couch. A few seconds passed after I heard that sound, and I was straining my ears to pick up anything that wasn't supposed to be there. Every noise suddenly felt magnified. When footsteps sounded on the floor, I immediately slithered off the couch onto all fours, crawled onto the ottoman, and started as slowly and as quietly as I could make my way toward the space between the love seat and the couch. I knew I could fit under the side table and be completely hidden by the dark in the ottoman, from playing hide-and-go-seek in the dark many times with my friends during sleepovers. I was nearly there when the footsteps became more apparent. I knew from the sound of them that whoever it was making their way through the kitchen now and toward the living room. They weren't hurried or anything, it was like they were just moving around in the kitchen. I glanced up from where I was crouched on the floor, and to my horror there was a dark silhouette standing in the archway between the two rooms. To my credit, I didn't scream, however I did panic. I stood immediately to my feet from my hiding spot and ran down the hallway, and I believe the only reason I wasn't overcome was because the person chasing me had to get around the ottoman in the dark to follow me. I bypassed the front door, the guest room, the bathroom, and ran to the farthest door down the hallway, my room. In all honesty, I probably wouldn't have been able to get the front door unlocked and open in time, as it was right off the side of the couch. When I was 10, I got a bird for my birthday. He was a blue-fronted Amazon, and I named him Boo, because it was October and close to Halloween. Boo had a large iron cage. It could have been metal, but very large, sturdy, and like 6 feet tall, and it was kept in my room. Despite the fact that Boo, like me, pretty much had the run of the house whenever he wanted. This information will become relevant later in the story. As I ran into the room, I slammed the door shut and locked it. However, the lock was simply one of those little turn locks that you can easily pop with a butter knife. I had barely gotten the door shut and locked when the person on the other side knocked on it. I have no idea why they knocked, if they did it to mock me or to scare me, but I knew in my heart that my little lock was not going to keep whoever it was on the other side out of my room. It didn't keep my mother out when we were arguing, and it wouldn't stand up to brute force. I was panicking, on the verge of tears when the person started laughing. It was low, quiet, and because of that it was even more frightening. It wasn't like manic laughter, but as if they were genuinely amused. It was the laughter that really frightened me, and I started heavily, hysterically crying and looking around my room to figure out what I could do. That is when I realized Boo's cage would fit almost perfectly between the door and the wall of my closet. The cage moved quietly on my carpeted floor, but as I pushed it into place, it scraped against the door and alerted whoever it was on the other side that I was trying to barricade myself in, because suddenly they threw themselves at my door, and you could hear the sound of the wood splintering and the door handle being twisted violently. Boo, who had been stirred by the movement awake, began literally screaming and flapping his wings. I might have screamed with him, but honestly, I don't remember screaming. I just remember being extremely scared. Terrified, I crawled under my bed/couch, a bunk bed with a futon on the bottom, metal, and waited. Several minutes passed and the person eventually stopped attacking my door. Boo continued screaming even after he had stopped. Though being under my bed gave me no feelings of being secure, I didn't come out from under it because I simply had nowhere else to go. I thought about trying to go out the window, but I was afraid he might expect it and therefore be waiting for me on the other side, and it was also several feet off the ground, as the house was built on a raised foundation. I remember laying under my bed, terrified for what felt like hours. I must have fallen asleep because I awoke the next morning to daylight. The fear of what happened came back to me as soon as I registered where I was and why, and scared that whoever had been in my house might still be there. I decided to crawl out the window and run to a neighbor's since it was daylight outside, and therefore I felt less afraid. I crawled out of the window, and once I was back on my feet, however, I carefully made my way around the house, and that's when I noticed the back door was wide open. Scared, but feeling braver now that I was outside and that it was morning instead of pitch black night, I walked up the back steps and peered inside. Seeing nothing out of the ordinary, I decided to go inside. I did a terrifying, heart-pounding room-to-room check, looking in closets and under beds, behind the couch, anywhere I thought even a small child might be able to fit. I even popped the lock on my mom's bedroom so I could check it, and then relocked it afterwards. When I was positive that there was no one there, I went back to lock the back door. I had left it open in case I needed to escape, and noticed that the breaker box on the opposite wall was open. The main switch had been pulled. I flipped it back on, locked both locks on the back door, checked all the windows and front door, and then called my mom, where I once again broke down crying hysterically. She called a coworker, who came and stayed the entire day with me as they drove back. My mom still took random trips to Florida after that, but I always went with her from then on forward. So terrifying, laughing, crazy person that broke into my house on New Year's Eve, please, let's not ever meet again. One summer evening, I hung out with my girlfriend for the day at our house. I ended up leaving around 10 or 11 p.m., so it was quite dark out. Before I drove off though, my girlfriend hung out with me in my car for a few minutes. Now my car was an early 90s Pontiac sedan. It did not have automatic locks. When my girlfriend stepped out of the car, she did not lock the door again. I drove off, and instead of having taken the back road home like I usually did, I decided to take the main road. Since it was late, there wasn't many cars out. However, there was a lady standing next to a bus stop. She was pacing around in a circle. I got the sense that she was anxious or nervous about something. When she saw my car, she flagged me down. I pulled over and reached over to roll down the window. No automatic windows either. That's when I noticed the door wasn't locked, and before I could do anything, the lady opened the passenger door and took a seat. I was surprised by this, but didn't feel like this lady was a threat. She was white, blonde hair, and probably in her late 30s or early 40s. I ask her if she's okay or if she needs help. She tells me that she's trying to get home, but her phone died so she couldn't get a hold of anyone. She also said that she missed the late bus. This sounded plausible to me, and since she didn't seem threatening and she was already in my car, I offered to drive her home. I start driving up the main road and ask her for directions to her place. We drove for maybe 2 minutes when she told me to turn into a residential neighborhood. As we're driving through here, she started talking to me non-stop. "Thank you so much for stopping. Not everyone is nice as you. Your car is super awesome too." I replied with a weak, "Yeah, thanks." She went on, "It's so nice to find someone who is so trusting this late at night. I like trusting people." At that point, we came to a stop sign, so I looked left and then right. When I turned to the right, she gave me a creepy smile, like ear-to-ear Joker type smile. I also noticed for the first time that her pupils were very dilated and darting around all over the place. At this point, I finally started to realize that picking up a strange woman late at night who may be on drugs perhaps was not the best idea. I started to think of ways to get her out of the car, but I also didn't want to be rude. Before I could think of anything though, she asked me for my phone so she could give her friend a call and let them know that she was coming home. I sheepishly lied to her and said I didn't own a phone. I was then struck with a feeling of dread because my phone's ringer was set too loud and any notification or message would reveal my lie. Just my luck, a moment later someone texted me and my phone went off. "I thought you didn't have a phone." "Oh, I forgot that I had it. I thought I left it at home." I don't appreciate being lied to. She trailed off as she had more to say. I started to get really nervous at this point. We were deep in this neighborhood, but it was really dark. I needed to get this lady out now. She then points up the road and tells me to take a right at the next stop sign. The road curved a bit, so from where I was, I could see that there was a dead end sign. For whatever reason, the thought of turning onto this dead end street terrified me. I then had an idea. Right before we got to the stop sign, I pulled over and told the lady that my car was making a funny noise and the temperature gauge was slowly going up. I turned off my car and popped my trunk. I told her I was grabbing a flashlight from the trunk and if she could step out and hold the light for me while I looked at the engine. I got out of the car. I looked back at her and she looked both mad and annoyed, but she also stepped out. I went to my trunk and rummaged through the things I had there for a few seconds. My flashlight was right in front of me, but I needed to be sure that she was standing in front of the car. Once she was there, I closed my trunk and started walking to the front of the car with my flashlight. My heart was pounding, but I knew I had to keep my voice steady. I gave her the flashlight and then said something like, "Oops, I forgot to pop open the hood. Let me do that real quick." I got back in my car and I did pop my hood. At the same time though, I turned the car back on and threw it in reverse. The lady just stood there, staring at me. Once I had enough distance, I put the car back in drive and drove straight past her. She was standing near a street light, so I got one last good look at her. I noticed she was holding a knife or some sorts in her hands. There was also a large man that stepped out of the shadows and stood next to her. At first I thought she might be getting attacked, but then they walked away together. I know that this was 100% my fault. It was stupid of me to let her get in my car, and even stupider for me to agree to drive her home. I don't know why she didn't even try to attack me earlier. I don't know if they were looking to simply carjack me or do something else. Despite fully accepting the blame, middle-aged blonde lady, let's not meet again. Alright, so that's it. Hope you enjoyed these stories. If you did, consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. But as always,
Have a nice day.